everybody for for taking the time out of this Father's Day to join us for a little bit of a discussion on firefighter health and wellness. This is going to be a very brief. What happened? Here we go. It's going to be a high-level overview, if you will, of a lot of material that actually comes out of the book called Firefighter Functional Fitness. So I don't know why we're not advancing here. Hold on. All right, here we go. So just as by way of a quick introduction, my name is Dan Kerrigan, and I'm currently fire chief in Upper Providence Township, Montgomery County, PA, just west of Philadelphia. About a 36-year fire service veteran. And quite honestly, within the fire service, it's been my passion. Health and wellness and fitness is my passion. I serve on the International Association of Fire Chiefs Safety, Health, and Survival Section Board of Directors, and spend quite a lot of my time outside of my day job trying to advance improvement of health and wellness in our fire service. That's my partner, Jim Moss. He and I are co-authors of the book, Firefighter Functional Fitness. And again, that's where most of this or all this material is really going to be coming from. Just a couple of quick things here for anybody that's not familiar with us. We have our website, firefighterfunctionalfitness.com. And also we are on all the social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all of that stuff is the same for us. Our handle is @firefighterffit. We encourage you to follow us and take advantage of all the free stuff that we put out there on almost a daily basis. Not on this slide, but we also have a YouTube channel. So if you or go on YouTube and just search Firefighter Functional Fitness, you will be brought to our YouTube channel where we have nearly 400 videos of exercise demonstrations, movements, circuits, workouts, and so forth. It's all free. We encourage you to take advantage of that resource as well. So any information that you want to learn more about the book and the workshops that we teach, you can head to firefighterfunctionalfitness.com. Also on that website for your free download is our special report, 10 biggest mistakes firefighters make with their fitness. So this is a compilation of what we believe to be the 10 most common mistakes that firefighters make with their fitness and health, and strategies to help overcome them. And the cool thing about this, aside from this this report being illustrated by fire engineering zone Paul Combs, so we partnered with him on this to get some of his illustrations in there. But the neat thing about this report is that you can download this and use it as kitchen table talk. You can use it as weekly or monthly or however often you do your training sessions. Each of the topics in this report can be used as a standalone discussion, drill, training, whatever you'd like to do with it. And again, it's all free too. So I encourage you to sign on to the website there and download that. It's all free for you to use. So again, I want to make it clear that this is going to be a high-level overview of a lot of material that we can present in more detail if we were to, for example, come to your organization and do a full-day workshop or a 2-day workshop. But what I want to do here first is just briefly give you all an idea of why we're here to begin with. And Jim and I, we got together, 5 or 6 years ago now, and with sharing of the same passion of improving firefighter health and wellness, and quite honestly, without a national mandate for health and wellness in the American Fire Service, it kind of became our mission to create a healthier fire service, one firefighter at a time. So that's what we do. We target not only fire departments, fire chiefs, and organization level folks, if you will, but we really are trying to target the individual firefighter, young, old, rookie, tenured, it doesn't matter. you know, everybody from the newest recruit all the way up to the fire chief. We tried to create a resource that, absent any other uh, you know, resources in your own department, that you could take matters into your own hands, if you will, and start doing a better job of taking care of yourself. And so um, we're here in general to discuss the what, why, and the how of how to accomplish this mission, right? So we don't have a whole lot of time before we get into the meat of this to kind of, when I start talking to you about the what and the how. But I think it's important to share with everybody just a couple of pieces of information that we expand on more deeply in our more comprehensive programs about the why that we're doing this. So why is it important that we pay better attention to our own health and wellness? And I think that as firefighters, as emergency services personnel, you probably all have a pretty good idea about the importance of your own health. But what I want to do is just briefly share with you some information or statistics that that are specific to the fire service, that should be eye openers to everybody that's watching or participating in this webinar. So these are, what you see coming up on your screen are risk factors that are increased specifically in firefighters. Okay, so in other words, all of these things that you see on your screen: obesity, high cholesterol, tobacco, diabetes, hypertension, your age, which obviously we don't have a whole lot of control over, a previous diagnosis of coronary heart disease. These risk factors are increased, as you can see, specifically for firefighters. So in other words, somebody that it has diabetes, that's a firefighter, is 10.2 times more likely to suffer sudden cardiac death being a firefighter. Okay, so this is some kind of eye-opening statistics that we've gleaned from the IAFF and the IAFC and our research partners in the fire service community, that tell us just how important it is, because of what we do, right? Because of what we do specifically, how important it is to take better care of ourselves. And I think if you'll look over this list, you'll agree with me that the vast majority of these risk factors that I'm showing you are things that we can actually control. Now, of course, we can't control our age. We may not be able to control a previous diagnosis of heart disease, but what we can do is we can be aware of those factors. We can be aware of our age and aware of our family history and aware of our previous diagnoses, and take steps to reduce that risk, just like we would if we had high cholesterol or we were smoking cigarettes and we needed to quit. So the interesting thing about this, and not to scare anybody away, but you know, when we look at these risk factors, we can also agree probably that they don't exist in vacuums, right? So it's likely that somebody that is suffering from hypertension may also have one or more of these other risk factors in play as well. Or somebody that has high cholesterol may also have some other of these risk factors as well. So it's comprehensive in nature. So it just really increases the importance of why we do this, right? So it can't be overstated, and I just wanted to kind of let that out there for y'all to see. Now, when it comes to on-duty deaths, and I'm talking about the United States Fire Administration's categories of on-duty deaths. You commonly refer to them as line of duty deaths, okay? It's actually called an on-duty death if we use the USFA statistics. So there's a couple of minor differences between an LODD and an on-duty death, namely that of the Hometown Heroes Act that includes you know, certain types of instances that occur within 24 hours of active firefighting or active service. So the point here that I want to make is that this is pretty recently updated. Okay, the statistics are pretty straightforward. From 2010 through 2019, from the USFA categories of on-duty deaths, stress and overexertion by far exceeds all of the other categories combined. And stress and overexertion, as you might imagine, is the category that basically is made up of heart attacks and strokes. Okay, so what can we say about how well we're doing in the fire service in terms of reducing risk and reducing line of duty deaths or on duty deaths? I think that we can say, generally speaking, that over the last decade or so, aside from certain anomalies, unfortunate anomalies such as 9/11, wildfires that claim multiple lives and so forth. If we take out those anomalies in the statistics, we can say pretty confidently that over the years, we've been fairly successful in reducing the overall annual number of on-duty deaths. It wasn't too long ago that we were experiencing well over 100 in a given year. And we can see that if we go back and look at individual years, we've been fairly successful in bringing that number down into the 90s, the 80s, and so forth. So I think that there's a lot to be proud of when it comes to our efforts in reducing fatal injuries on the fire ground. But the problem with it is, this is where I come in and where Jim comes in, and what sometimes gets lost in the mix is that although we're reducing the overall number of on-duty deaths in a given year, what we're really not doing such a good job of is reducing the number of on-duty deaths that are caused by stress and overexertion. So whether it's 100 firefighters that die in a given year on duty, or 80 or 120, what we're still seeing is that upwards of half, if not more than half of those, are still falling into that stress and overexertion category. So we need to do a better job of that from an organizational level, from an individual level, from a company officer level, from a crew level, all the way across the board, right? If I'm being honest with you, and even as a fire chief, I'm going to sit here and tell you that our inability to improve our health and wellness is a leadership issue in the fire service in a lot of ways. I think that, and when I say leadership, I mean leadership at all levels. I mean formal and informal leadership. I mean the ability for fire departments, career, volunteer, combination, doesn't matter to me. The ability to prioritize our own health and wellness, like we've prioritized the repair and maintenance of our apparatus and our equipment, is lacking. Okay, but I'm not here to blame fire departments for not doing what they're supposed to do. What I'm here to try to encourage you to do today as individual firefighters is still to recognize and realize that it's still ultimately your own personal responsibility, right, to maintain your own health and wellness. It's not for us to sit back and wait for our fire department to do it for us, right? So absent any kind of a formal program in your particular agency, we know from the last NFPA needs assessment survey that somewhere around 25 to 27% of the fire departments in the United States have a basic health and wellness program. So it's pretty bad when only a quarter of our fire departments in the country can say that they even have a basic health and wellness program, whether that means annual fire department physicals, fitness programs, those kinds of things. So while I want to say strongly that we as fire service leaders need to do a better job of prioritizing our people like we do our apparatus and our equipment, it's not an excuse for anybody else to wait around for that to happen. Because if you're going to wait around for that to happen, you're going to be waiting for a long time, and it's your own health that's going to suffer. Okay, so we're going to talk quickly about, we're going to give overviews, I should say, not too quickly, but give overviews of our way of approaching overall comprehensive health and wellness, right? So if I was to teach you a class and I was in your fire department, we would be having a discussion about this right now. And we'd be asking you as the audience, how do you define functional fitness? Okay. And typically the discussion moves towards the concept or the idea that functional fitness, and when I talk about fitness, I'm not just talking about working out. So let's just keep that in mind, and we'll expand on that as we move along here. But functional fitness is relative based on your vocation and goals, right? So in this slide here, we can see a gymnast, we can see a football player, and we can see a firefighter, that happens to be me, crawling. So we know that gymnasts train a certain way to excel in performance of their chosen vocation. We know that football players train a certain way to excel in their performance in their chosen sport. And so should we, is the idea behind functional fitness, is that we should gear our training and our overall lifestyle, if you will, to complement the things that we do as firefighters, right? So it's relative. So, you know, what are your goals? Our goals in terms of functional fitness is to make sure that you take the approach that you're actually training and not just going to the gym and quote unquote exercising by getting on the nearest machine and doing something just because you think you know how to do it or you should do it, right? The idea here is to train for what we do and train for performance. So the whole overall goal here is to improve our health and our performance. And that's really what functional fitness is all about. And we do that through 4 different pillars, which we're going to discuss here one by one. So what is firefighter functional fitness? It's a comprehensive approach. In other words, it doesn't just mean physical fitness, and we're going to talk more about that, right? It's practical. It's relevant to the job, 100% relative to our job as firefighters. And last but not least, and not to get into a discussion about different types of workouts or brands of workouts, but functional fitness is the type of a concept that when you engage in these activities, you should always be able to answer yes to the following 3 questions. And that is it safe? Is it effective? And is it functional? So we know that we can do exercises that may be safe and effective for us, but they may not necessarily be functional for firefighters, or there may be a better choice to accomplish the performance aspect of an exercise. We know that there are exercises that are safe, effective, and functional unless you do them unsafely, and that could be, you know, improper form. It could be the attempting of lifting weight that's way more than you could lift. It could be any one of those things that causes you to realistically and honestly answer no to one of those questions, and that's what we're trying to avoid here when it comes to physical fitness. So the first thing we're going to give an overview on is physical fitness. This is sort of the fun quotient of the 4 pillars. It's probably what most people that have any idea about, you know, Dan and Jim, it's probably what they think about the most when we talk about firefighter functional fitness. And certainly it deserves a lot of attention. So when we talk about physical fitness, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you an overview, a very brief or high level overview of our approach. There are many approaches out there. This is what we believe to work best for everybody and to be able to expand and contract based on your own personal needs. So let's get into this and we'll move along pretty quickly here. So again, there's many ways of accomplishing a certain task, right? So this isn't to discredit or put down any other kind of workout program or regimen, because there are many out there, and ultimately if you're doing something somewhat safely versus doing nothing and sitting on a recliner, then I'm more than happy that you're doing something, okay? But we're trying to address the what I would like to say the mere mortals of the fire service are, the 99% of us that are not superhuman. And so in this example, we can see an individual here doing what we would suspect to be an inverted handstand push-up. And that may be fine for that person, and it may be safe for that person to do that because they've trained that way. But for the majority of us that don't participate in that kind of a program, the idea here is that there are other ways to accomplish that same pushing task or that same ability to improve our pushing or overhead strength or upper body strength. And so we would choose, in the functional fitness world, we would choose something more simple like an overhead press. Okay, so that's kind of an example of where we're headed with this little bit of a program. We want to focus more specifically on function and performance rather than the old ways of training, which included single function weight machines and the like, isometric movements that only work on a single muscle group, that don't put you in the anatomical positions that you're likely going to be in when you're out on the fire ground doing your job, right? So this is probably familiar with a lot of people, the old way of doing these things, single function machines. Some folks may think of it like this: chest day, biceps day, back day, whatever day you want to pick. We're talking about a traditional or a more archaic approach to your overall fitness being focusing on specific muscles on a specific day rather than larger muscle groups or movements and performance instead of the bodybuilding mentality. So we want to try to break all that down and give you a concept that we believe simplifies things. Like, we're firefighters, right? So let's just be honest with each other and say that we like people to give us good practical information. We don't like a lot of fluff, and we want to just get on with it and get it done. And we want to be able to do something that is effective for us, and it's not complicated and not something we have to think about over and over again, right? So what do we want to do? We're a firefighter, or we want to be a firefighter. So then we're going to train like a firefighter. And so Jim and I came up with a concept called the Big 8. And for those of you that are familiar with this already, you may already have heard of it. Excuse me, just a quick drink there. You may have already heard of this, but indulge me, if you will, for those of you who are just now getting introduced to this. So we're taking all of our physical fitness, all of our performance-based metrics, if you will, and we're going to group them into what we call the Big 8. And the Big 8 consists of 3 foundational components, and that is core strength, cardiovascular capacity, and flexibility. And then the other 5 components, hopefully you see this as simple as we do. These are going to be what we call our functional strength components, or the categories of the Big 8 that focus on functional strength. And what we tried to do is just think of the best way to relate that to all of you so that you could easily remember it. So what we came up with was very simply push, pull, lift, carry, and drag. And so when you combine the 3 foundational components, core strength, cardio, and flexibility, with the 5 functional strength components, I think you'll agree that all of these things are things that we do individually or in conjunction with one another on the fire ground. So we know that on the fire ground, we push, we pull, we lift, we carry, and we drag. And we couldn't think of an easier way for everybody to remember that. So everything that we do in terms of physical fitness is going to relate to one or more of the categories in the Big 8. And it's really quite that simple. It really is. It doesn't have to be complicated. Your workout programming does not have to be complicated. Your fitness does not have to be complicated. It just needs to be performance-based, effective, safe, and functional. Okay, so what I'd like to do now is I'd like to quickly go through each of these 8 components and just give you some very basic tips and tricks on what we're looking for here when we address these components in our own personal workout regimens. Okay, bear in mind again that I'm going to be moving through this stuff somewhat quickly, and that there's a lot more to it than I can ever be able to present in a 2 or less than 2 hour presentation. So if you have any, I should have said this in the beginning, if you have any questions or concerns, I will give you all of our information at the end of the presentation, and you can certainly email us or contact us, and we'll help you out any way we can. All right. So our first component is core. Core strength is really the basis for everything in terms of our overall physical performance. Okay. So what is core? It's technically speaking, it incorporates over 20 muscles in your abdomen area, right? But what people need to understand is it's not just your belly. It's not just your stomach, right? It's everything essentially from the breast line down to your hips, in the front, and the sides, and the back, right? So the goal here with core and strengthening our core is that it becomes the solid link between our upper and lower body, right? And so when we focus on our core, it's the entire torso, front, sides, and back. And we want to make sure that we're addressing all of those larger muscle groups, not just the quote unquote abs that everybody thinks about when they think about core. We're not interested so much in physique as we are performance. And you're going to keep hearing that from me throughout this presentation. If you're, if one of your personal goals is to have six-pack abs, more power to you. That's really a great thing to strive for. But that's not the primary goal of Firefighter Functional Fitness. The primary goal for Firefighter Functional Fitness is to strengthen the front, the sides, and the back, your entire torso, so that you have that base or that foundation of strength and flexibility for your entire body. So good for you if you take that beyond what we're looking for, but that's our primary goal here. So when we're addressing our core, there's a couple things that we need to think about. And one of the things is, and probably the most important, is that like most exercises other than high intensity interval training, core work is done slowly and methodically, right? There's no need to rush through these exercises and movements, especially when you're dealing with, your core and when you're dealing with lifting heavy weights and so forth. So one of the things that one of the rules that we want to make sure everybody understands is that we do not want to go fast through this stuff. The second thing is, in order for us to get the most effect out of the exercises or the movements that we're doing, is that we want to make sure that we're engaging our core. Okay. Luckily for us, most of the, if not all of the movements that we suggest in our book and in our workshops, because they're functional in nature, if you're doing them in proper form, you are having to automatically engage your core to a certain level in order to do them correctly, right? But if I were to ask you, what does it mean by engaging your core? And I know that you can't answer me right now. If I was to ask you that, I would expect an answer similar to something like somebody telling me, I'm going to tense up a little bit, or I'm going to, what we like to describe it as, if you were about to get punched in the stomach from somebody, what would you do to prepare for that, right? If you knew it was coming. So what we want to do is we want to engage our core by tensing up a little bit, right? Not so much 100%, but in the 70 to 80% range. The more that you engage your core and the other muscle groups when you're doing certain things like planks, the more benefit you're going to get out of the exercise, okay? What we want to avoid is we want to avoid any unnatural movements. We want to avoid hyperextension and hyperflexion of the spine, and we want to avoid torquing of the spine as well. There's no need to be pushing our bodies beyond the natural limits of flexibility when we engage in our core, okay? So what do we want to address? What do we want to accomplish by getting our core workouts in? Well, there's a couple of different ways to do this. Jim and I, we actually, when we do our workouts, we actually engage in core work as part of our warm-up in a lot of cases, right? So no matter what we're going to be doing for our primary exercises in our workout for that session, we know that we can still engage our core and get some core work in even in our warm-up. So depending on if you're doing a standalone or not a standalone workout, anywhere between 3 and 10 total core exercises that involve the front, the sides, and the back, okay? Not just the front. Usually that's going to take up about 10 to 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes if you're really into it. And we want to try to make sure that we're focusing on our core at least 2 to 4 times a week. Now, bear in mind that your workout regimen needs to be practical and achievable, right? So the same kind of objectives that we look at for SMART goals, right? So if your particular workout, your schedule only allows you to work out 3 times a week, and you know that you can accomplish that, but to go beyond that, it's going to be pushing it, then you need to fashion your workout regimen around a 3-day-a-week workout cycle. And in that case, I would make sure that I would be involving the core in all 3 of those workouts. So before we even get into the actual mechanics of training, we need to be honest with ourselves and what we can actually commit to in a given week. So that's important for everybody to understand in your overall approach to your fitness. All right, so that was core. Again, very brief overview of core. The next step is we're going to move into cardiovascular capacity, and we should know by now, if we don't know already, that the essence of firefighting, if you will, is the combination of muscular endurance and cardiovascular capacity, right? So we need to be able to be strong enough to do the things that we need to do them in terms of a time commitment, to be able to do them long enough to get the job done. And we need to have the capacity to do them as well. So any kind of a workout regimen or program that does not focus on cardiovascular capacity, you're shortchanging yourself a lot. So what is cardiovascular capacity? Is the combination of, is the blending of cardiovascular fitness and aerobic capacity. And this is our way of thinking about it. So how do we accomplish all of that? Well, there's a couple of different ways that we can do that, right? Essentially, we're looking at measurement of effectiveness, right, in transporting oxygen to the muscles and how efficient our muscles use that oxygen. Okay, that's sort of the technical way of looking at this, right? So I'm a pure fitness trainer. I'm certified to train you all, and I understand that from a technical standpoint. But what is really important to you is what it means is that you need to be able to become more effective in better use of the oxygen that's moving to your muscles to engage in that strenuous activity, right? That's staying power for us. The majority of what we do in strenuous firefighting tasks is in the realm of anaerobic capacity. So you have explosive, you have anaerobic, and then you have on the other end of the fitness continuum, you have aerobic. I argue that the majority of what we do happens in that anaerobic state. So if you think about how you feel when you start cramping up or you start losing strength in your grip and things like that, those kinds of things, those limiting factors in your performance on the fire ground are occurring in the anaerobic state. It's after that initial burst of adrenaline is gone, right? And your body is not able to keep up with the demand. Okay, so for my efforts, for best bang for the buck, as far as I'm concerned, we need to work on improving our function and performance in the anaerobic state. And how do we do that? Well, that's what we're going to talk about here really quickly. So, but it's important for you to realize what happens to your body during firefighting tasks, right? I know my partner Jim has posted screenshots of wearables that have easily demonstrated that his heart rate has actually gone up above 200 beats a minute during strenuous firefighting activities, including overhaul. So imagine, if you will, your heart at rest at 70 beats a minute. Imagine your heart rate increasing to over 190 beats a minute and having to sustain that for several minutes at a time. Okay, I would argue that it's not even that easy to recreate that in the gym, because you're lacking the adrenaline and the other factors that add to that on the fire ground when you're in an emergency situation. So you think it's important? If you don't think it's important that we prepare our bodies for the rigors of firefighting, I'm going to tell you that strenuous firefighting tasks, they affect every body system that we have. And so actually, I can even give you another example. Just the alerting of a house fire without even any knowledge of whether it's a working fire or not. We recently captured some vital statistics from somebody that as soon as they were alerted to the house fire, as soon as it was dispatched, their heart rate jumped to somewhere close to 150 beats a minute. And that was not even like before, that was before they left the station. Okay, so if you think back to that slide that I showed you earlier, where it said hypertension increased your risk as a firefighter by 12 times, increased risk for sudden cardiac death, you're already starting out behind, right? In terms of if you have hypertension or uncontrolled hypertension or even pre-hypertension. So, so we really need to pay attention to that. And we really need to make a concerted effort to make sure that we're improving our performance and our fitness level in that way. How do we do that? Well, primarily we're going to focus on high intensity interval training And we also, however, we can also incorporate endurance-based cardiovascular training as well. If I had the choice and I only have a certain amount of time in a given week, I'm going to focus on high intensity interval training because it gives you the most bang for your buck and it takes up the least amount of your time, if you will. So if you're like me, if you're a fitness minimalist, I like to call myself, I like to get in, get it done, and get out. I don't like to spend, 2 hours a day, 6 days a week in the gym. I'm going to get the most effective training out of short, high intensity interval training sessions. There's science that tells us that 16 minutes of high intensity interval training in a given week equates to over 150 minutes of endurance based training. So imagine that, if you will, if you just trained 20 to 40 minutes a week on high intensity interval training and incorporated some strength stuff into it, how much more effective your workouts would be, right? So keys here, probably the most important key to high intensity interval training is this. It's that you exert 100% effort for the entire work period. Okay, so if your high intensity interval training is a 20 seconds work, 40 seconds rest, for example, then in that 20 seconds of work, whatever it is you're doing, you are supposed to be exerting 100% effort from the beginning until the clock says rest. Okay, that's how you're going to get most effective results from this. The goal is to maintain a heart rate at least 85% of our theoretical maximum heart rate. So how do we calculate that? I don't know if I have the slide here. No, I don't. So to calculate your theoretical maximum heart rate, you take 220 minus your age, and then to get 85%, you just multiply it by 0.85. Okay, so you can figure that out for yourself, and that's your goal. That's your scientific goal, if you will, to achieve and maintain that 85% of your theoretical maximum heart rate during interval training. How do we figure that out if we don't have a wearable? Well, the talk test tells us that if you're only able to say 1 or 2 words, and then you have to take a breath before you can continue, then you're in the right range. Whereas for endurance-based training, if you're able to complete a sentence, but you're winded when you do it, imagine yourself jogging on a treadmill and somebody's talking to you, right? They ask you a question and you're able to answer it, but you're winded in doing it. Then you're in the general range of endurance-based training. But if you can't finish that sentence, if you can only say 1 or 2 words, that's where you want to be. Okay, so under limited time, this is where we want to be, right? If we only have so much time to work out in a given week, combining high intensity interval training and strength training is really the essence of what we do. If you think about the tasks that we perform on the fire ground, I think you can easily relate that to high intensity interval training. So endurance base is something like, 30, 45, 50, 60 minutes of doing something that you like at a more moderate intensity or a more moderate pace. That could be exercise, bike, treadmill, rowing at a lower pace. It could be swimming. Swimming is an excellent endurance-based cardiovascular exercise. The idea is to do something that you like, okay? And in this case, we're going to be focused on 70% of our maximum heart rate instead of 85%, because that's really the only difference. Now, again, both are important, but if I had to choose and I had limited time availability to get my workouts in a given week, I'm going to always opt for the high intensity training and make sure that I'm improving my performance in that way. So we've covered core and we've covered cardiovascular capacity in a very high level overview. The next foundational component, if you will, the third leg of that stool, if you will, is flexibility. And I think it's probably fair to say that most everybody that I've talked to and probably everybody that's listening in today would admit that we could probably be more flexible, right? There's a lot of things that affect our ability to be flexible and to be mobile. We can think of a few things. What are some things that affect our flexibility, right? It could be the fact that our age comes into play, right? Believe it or not, the fact that you are a male or a female affects your flexibility. There are certain things that males are predisposed to being better at, and females are predisposed to being better at, right? Flexibility is an advantage of females. Upper body strength is an advantage to males. Lower body strength is more of an advantage to females, just anatomically speaking. So there's things like that that affect our flexibility. Previous injuries can certainly affect our flexibility. And honestly, our overall fitness level certainly affects our flexibility. The idea is that, you know, we work in constricting turnout gear. Our bodies are asked to contort into really odd and unnatural positions when we're on the fire ground, when we're doing our work. And the more flexible we are, the more we're going to get out of our performance, and the more we're going to be able to reduce our risk of injury. So if I was to ask you what 44% is in a classroom, if we were all together in a classroom, what would you think that would be? It really, what it means is that 44% of us in the fire service at some point in our career in the fire service, whether a volunteer or career, it doesn't matter, are going to suffer some sort of a significant musculoskeletal injury that's associated with poor flexibility, right? So when we think about on-duty injuries specifically and look at it through that lens, that's what we're looking at, okay? What does it lead to? It leads to obviously pain and discomfort and inability to perform. Poor flexibility leads to longer recovery times when you do get injured. And for the chiefs out there, it also leads to time off, leads to workers' comp claims, it leads to overtime, it leads to all of those things that affect your budget, that money could be better spent on other things. But if we increase our insurance premiums and we're paying out a lot of overtime, if you're in a career department, to cover for people that are getting injured, then that impacts your overall budget and budget performance as well. So when we want to get the new toy, we might not be able to afford it because we've got to divert money in our budget to addressing other issues like premiums and overtime. So how do we improve our functional flexibility? One of the things we talked about briefly was cardiovascular capacity training. So the very act of engaging in cardiovascular capacity training, because of the things that you're going to be doing, serves to improve your flexibility, right? So think about something even as simple as doing walking lunges, if you will, right? Those are already improving your flexibility even as much as they're improving your capacity and your leg strength, right? So that's an example of that. There are certain machines that we can participate on doing exercises. This is a Jacob's ladder. You know, anything like that, an exercise bike, a treadmill, a step mill, all of those serve to increase our flexibility. Okay, stretching. All right, we do dynamic stretching and we do static stretching. And dynamic stretching is primarily geared towards pre-workout warm-ups. Okay, so dynamic stretching really is nothing more than stretching in motion. So what I like to do, what Jim likes to do, is focus our pre-workout flexibility stuff, focus that on the same areas that we're going to be training that day. So if I'm doing a lower body workout on a given day, then I'm going to focus on limbering up my legs and my hips and those associated muscles. So I might be doing some walking lunges. I might be, you know, doing a warm up on an exercise bike or something like that to get my lower body limbered up. Reach and hold stretching or static stretching is really should be more limited to post workout, and that would be more of the, you know, reach and hold for 30 to 60 seconds type of a stretching that we're all accustomed to when we think about stretching, and that's after your muscles are already warmed up. The third thing is yoga, and we like to call it functional yoga or FOGA, but it's not something to be ashamed of or anything like that. We recommend that, and we'll talk about this in a sec, that you try to engage in some kind of a basic functional yoga session at least once a week. All right. not only does it improve your flexibility, but it also improves your muscular endurance, and in some cases, your cardiovascular capacity as well. And for those of you that think, I don't do yoga, or I'm not going to do yoga or whatever, if you engage in any kind of ordinary, common stretching, then the chances are you're already doing yoga moves in those stretches if you pay attention to it. So definitely something to think about. We want to make sure that we're not avoiding or missing the boat on our flexibility, because it's going to be a limiting factor in all of our other areas of fitness. We do. So we can focus on stretching 30 to 60 minutes total, depending on what you're doing. Like I said, we're going to do some of that dynamic stretching pre-workout. We're going to do a little bit of cool down stretching post-workout. Try to get in some flexibility training at least 3 times a week. You know, you can do it even on your rest days. You can still stretch, and it doesn't have to take a lot of time. As far as other tips, we want to make sure that we're breathing appropriately when we're doing our reach and hold stretching, right? Inhaling slowly and exhaling into the stretch to allow those muscles to elongate even more. And the last thing is, make sure that you're not moving past discomfort and into the pain category, right? It's important that when we stretch, we feel a little bit of discomfort, but you have to know your body and know your limits, right? So we don't want to move past discomfort and into sheer pain, because that's just going to end up hurting you or injuring you, okay? So we covered the first 3 categories of our Big 8 method, and that's core, cardiovascular capacity, and flexibility. Now I'd like to just go over with you some tips for your functional strength training, and then we'll move on to the other categories of the session. All right, so when it comes to strength training, we call these the 4 R's. This is our way of remembering them. And really, what is strength training at its essence or at its core is providing resistance to a muscle so that it basically can get stronger, right? So when we provide resistance to our muscle groups, we also have to allow ourselves to give the rest, the recovery, and the repair that's needed to get the most bang for our buck from our strength training, right? So we're going to talk about that. It doesn't do you any good to overdo it with your strength training, because in the end, you end up going to injure yourself instead of improving yourself. And if you don't allow your muscles the time to properly repair themselves after you create that resistance and those little micro tears in your muscles, then you're not going to get the most benefit from the strength training. It's just going to make you plateau a lot quicker, and you're not really going to get much of a benefit out of it. So our purpose, I went past that. Our purpose is threefold in functional strength training. It's to build muscular strength, to build muscular endurance, and also to focus on explosive power from time to time for overall increase in our performance, right? Everything that we're doing when it comes to the Big 8 has to be able to be related back to what we do on the fire ground in some way, okay? Not in just the movement itself, but in terms of the orientation of your body, if you will, when you're doing those movements. So we want to make sure that we're operating on all the different planes, right? And elevations when we're doing our training, and not just laying down on a bench, for example, right? Think about the things that you do on the fire ground, and think about how you want to recreate them in the gym or in the fire station, okay? We can use just about anything available to us in the fire station to help us train for strength, right? Before we even get into the common modalities, let's just take a quick look at some of the things that we are going to be able to find around the fire station. We're going to have hose, rescue tools, ladders. We're going to have, various heavy equipment and saws and things like that we have available to us. So there's no reason why we can't use those and engage with those tools and equipment in our training sessions. The advantage to it actually is that it's not only going to help us improve our strength, but it's also going to hopefully help us improve our proficiency with that particular piece of equipment as well. So we get value added advantage there. What else can we use? My favorite, the kettlebell. We have sandbags, we have dumbbells, we have barbells, we have medicine balls, slam balls, plates, all kinds of equipment that may or may not be available to you in your firehouse gym or in the gym that you go to on your days off. But those are all applicable when it comes to functional strength training. Many other things that I probably don't even have time to go over here. Quite honestly, and there's some machines here. We have TRX straps, we have resistance bands, we have cable crossover machines. All of these things apply and are fair game for us when it comes to our functional strength training. Okay, so ultimately, if we don't have anything at all, we still have our body, right? So there's a number of body weight exercises that we can do, and all you have to do is go on the internet and Google body weight exercises, and there's literally hundreds of things that you can pick from. So what's the message here, or the take home is that it's not an excuse that you don't have equipment to train, because you have a body, and if you have a body, you can train, right? So, as I said in the beginning, we're going to focus this stuff on what we do on the fire ground. We're going to try to make it as simple, as simple as possible for us as firefighters to remember how we're going to do this, right? So we're going to do push, pull, lift, carry, and drag, and we'll start off with the push very briefly. Some different pushing movements that you might think about when we engage in activities on the fire ground, like forcible entry, ventilation, hose line handling, overhaul, all of these kinds of things. Yeah, even pushing a fire truck into a station, right, at a housing, that qualifies as a pushing movement. I kid, right? So when we think about our pushing movements on the fire ground, we want to do what? We want to try to replicate those movements in the gym. Okay, so some of the things that we do in order to do that are going to be things like push-ups, dips, cable pushes, overhead presses, those kinds of things that are compound movements that can be done on different levels and with different, how can I put this, different stages of difficulty, right? Or those are the kinds of things that we want to focus on when it comes to our pushing exercises in the gym. In our book, we have literally lists of probably nearly 100 exercises for you to reference, if you will. We just don't have time to go through them all today, but I would highly recommend picking one up if you haven't. So once we get to the push, we get to the pull, and we'll look at some of the things that we do in terms of pulling. Probably the thing that you can think of the most is stretching hose lines and hooking ceilings and walls. But there's lots of other things like prying, victim removal, self-rescue technique, ground ladder raises, hoisting tools and equipment with rope. There's all kinds of things that we need to be proficient at on the fire ground that involve pulling movements. And so for our bang for our buck, some of our best examples of our pulling exercises are going to be the pull-up, hoisting. We like charged hose line stretches and pulls. So we can combine that into several movements too, which is nice. We can do a sort of a nozzle forward type of a hose advancement to move forward with it, if you will, and then turn around and pull a charged hose line after that. And we can also use the machines that are available to us to simulate pulling movements that we might encounter on the fire ground, like a cable crossover machine. We like the cable crossover machine because it's able to be adapted to a lot of the different things that we do, and on a lot of different planes, ground level, standing up, overhead, and so forth. And it's also very low impact, so it's low impact on our muscles and joints. The lift. So certainly we lift things on the fire ground, and a lot of things that we lift come in conjunction with doing other movements as well. We may lift something and carry it, or we may lift something up and drag it, or we may push something and then lift it up, or pull something and then lift it up. So I hope we can kind of start to see the idea here, the methodology that we're trying to project with you, is that these things that we do on the fire ground just have to be replicated in a gym. We like to think it's as about as simple as it can be. Our lifting exercises are going to focus primarily on our lower body, right? So deadlifts, any kind of deadlift with a barbell, with kettlebells, we do walking lunges, we do equipment lifts. In this picture down below here, we're just sort of demonstrating a hose load or an apartment pack or whatever you call it locally. We start out with that laying on the ground. We lift it up to our shoulder, we stand up, we kneel back down, we put it back down. So seems rudimentary, but it's very effective. So lots of different lifting exercises to increase our performance and our strength, particularly in our lower body, okay? And we move on to the carry. This is interesting, and I think a lot of people get a lot of good information out of the fact that, or a realization out of the fact that we don't even really realize how much we carry before we even go to work, right? So in our example, in our little test, when Jim put together his firefighting ensemble, he's there, he's just in his turnout gear and his helmet, his portable radio and his air pack, okay? He's now added 70 pounds in our example to what he is carrying, right? So he has his own body weight and now he has 70 pounds. When we pick up a set of irons, we add another 25 pounds. And then when we pick up a water can, we get another 30 pounds. So conservatively speaking, and you might not have ever thought about it like this because it's just part of what we do, but if you get off of your fire apparatus, excuse me, and you're properly equipped, as you should be, when you're walking to the scene, then you're likely carrying at least another 125 pounds worth of equipment on your person before you ever do anything physical, before you ever go anywhere or do anything to actually engage in an activity on the fire ground. So how important is it that we increase our carrying capacity? Well, it starts with us, right? It starts with us being able to overcome the weight that we have on us and that we're carrying and still be able to function effectively operating a hose line, pulling a ceiling, finding a victim and dragging a victim out, whatever you can think of in your own mind that you relate to the fire ground. We have to be able to overcome 125 pounds or more of equipment before we even start to think about doing something else. So if you remember when we talked about cardiovascular capacity, I think you can see how all of this sort of connects together into a nice little package. We can't just be one-dimensional firefighters. We have to be able to be strong, and we have to be able to have the endurance and the muscular endurance to be able to withstand the rigors of what we do. Some of our top carrying exercises is really no brainer here. It's just basically carrying equipment, right? So we can carry hose loads in a number of different ways. We can carry heavy equipment. We can do so at arm's length. We can do so at our chest on an rack position. We can carry things overhead. We can change elevations with our carrying. Okay, so I think you all realize that we don't ever just operate on flat level ground when we're at a fire, right? We need to go up and down elevations, stairs, uneven terrain, all of those things come into play. So we need to make sure that we incorporate some of that into our carrying exercises as well. And then lastly, we have the drag, and I think I'm not going to insult anybody's intelligence here about the different types of things we do in terms of dragging motions, right? We drag hose, we drag people, we drag equipment. It's a big part of what we do, and it's a part of what we need to be able to be proficient at on the fire ground. And so that's the last of the 5 functional strength categories that we talk about. So thinking about what happens when you drag this is, in this case, an uncharged 5-inch supply line. I jokingly say I wouldn't recommend trying to drag a charged 5-inch supply line anywhere. But what happens when you drag an uncharged hose line, right? The further you go with that, the more difficult it becomes. As that hose plays out on the ground, more friction builds, and the further away I get from the starting point, the more difficult it becomes for me to actually pull that or drag that hose along. So it's an excellent and simple exercise to set up, right? We can drag mannequins at standing level on the ground. We can do tire drags. We can do sled drags. You're only limited by your imagination. But the idea is that once again, that we incorporate all of these different categories into our overall weekly, if you will, workout regimen. Okay, so to review the big 8: core strength, cardiovascular capacity, flexibility, and then we have push, pull, lift, carry, and drag. So if we had more time, I would actually be able to incorporate a little bit of how we actually put all that together into a weekly workout regimen. We're a little bit short on time today, but I will say this, that it's pretty easy to get all that done and get it done into a 3 or 4 or 5 day a week workout regimen by simply focusing on an upper body workout, a lower body workout, 1 or 2 cardiovascular capacity workouts, and then maybe 1 day is just an overall full body circuit training workout. So you can incorporate all of the components of the big 8 into a 4 or 5 day a week workout regimen by just simply focusing on upper, lower, cardio, and a couple of different sessions there of flexibility mixed in with it. And again, anybody that has any questions, I'll give you my information at the end, and you can send those questions along, and I'm happy to answer them. But we want to move on with the time we have to cover the other 3 pillars. Recovery and rest, probably as important, if not more important, than the actual activity of training or working out, is giving your body a chance to recover from those workouts, right? So not every day is a gym day, right? We do need to take our rest days, and we need to take them seriously and allow our bodies the time to recover. So we break our rest and recovery module down into 2 different forms. That's passive recovery and active recovery. And luckily for us, passive recovery is takes the least effort of anything at all, right? Passive recovery simply means sleep, right? Sleep and rest, right? The most critical in allowing your body the time to recover, both physically and mentally, is just making sure that we pay attention to our rest and our sleep, okay? And probably none of us do that to the extent that we should, but we think it's very important that we talk about that. So number 1 in terms of passive rest is post-strength training rest, okay? So one of the things that we like to tell everybody, and that we really need you to make sure that you're paying attention to when you're doing your workouts, is that when you work out, when you train a specific part of your body, let's say we do an upper body strength training day, so we're focusing on the large muscle groups in the arms and the chest and the shoulders, okay? It's very important that that post-strength training rest be at least 48 hours before we heavily engage those muscle groups again, right? So that part is critical. We recommend that for strength training that you give your muscles 48 hours of rest before you go back to them again. So if you do an upper body strength training day on Monday, you should rest on Tuesday and Wednesday from using the upper body exclusively, and not really revisit that until at least Thursday, right? There's plenty of other stuff that we can do in the meantime. There's lower body, there's cardio, there's core, there's flexibility, there's all of those other things that we can do, right? So that's the first part of it. The second concept is actually that not every day is a workout day. And depending on your level of conditioning, and depending on the personal commitment that you can make time-wise to your workout regimen, that sometimes you just need to rest during the week. So rest days are important as well. So, and that means just keeping, active and so forth. There's no reason why you can't take a brisk walk or do something like that to stay active, but it's okay to not go to the gym is my point. It's okay to not go to the gym once or twice a week and actually just give your body some overall passive time to recover, okay? Probably more important than even that, though, is our inability as folks in the fire service to properly rest when we can. And we know that whatever your status is, whether it's career or volunteer, right? We all get it that when you're actually quote unquote on duty, it's almost impossible to get adequate rest or sleep, right? I understand that, right? If you work a 24-hour shift, chances are you're not going to get good sleep. If you are on duty as a volunteer on a duty crew or whatever, and you catch a couple of runs overnight, you're certainly not going to get the sleep that you need. It becomes even more important for us to focus then on when we're not on duty, right? So what are some of the effects that we deal with when we don't get enough sleep? Hormone imbalances, immune system dysfunction, mental, cognition, and motor function. All of these different things that add to the risks of heart disease, stroke, hypertension, all of those things, diabetes, kidney disease, all of these things are negative outputs of sleep deprivation or imbalance in our sleep. So it affects pretty much everything we do. In fact, I like to say that it's all connected when it comes to health and wellness, right? Our fitness, our nutrition, our sleep, our hydration, our overall mental or behavioral health and wellness, everything's connected, right? We can't look at this anymore like it's just, I just have to fix one thing and I'll be fine. Everything affects everything when it comes to our bodies and when it comes to our physical and mental health. So we need to pay as much attention to when we're not doing something as we do when we're doing something. So here's some quick tips for improving sleep, right? These aren't difficult. I think that probably most people realize these, but there's a difference between knowing what they are and taking action. Okay, so one of the best ways to help improve your sleep and get better quality sleep is to actually exercise. Yes, believe it or not, if you exercise regularly, you're going to feel better after you take that shower and you lay down and go to bed, and your chances are you're going to sleep a more restful sleep. We need to also focus specifically on trying to get at least 7 or 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep whenever we can. So if we can't do that when we're on duty, then we must focus on that more specifically when we're off duty and try our best to make sure that we're getting that accomplished. Absolutely, by all means, we need to avoid the stimulation, right? So we live in the age of smartphones and electronics, and that's not helping us in terms of our overall health. It just isn't. Okay, so our suggestion to all of you, if you're going to take anything away, and what I would like you to take away from today is one little thing in each of these 4 pillars that you can make a change with your own personal health today, right? So we went over physical fitness. Hopefully you picked up on maybe one thing that you can maybe add to your workout regimen, or something that you can change about what you're doing that's going to help you improve, right? The same thing goes for rest and recovery. Pick something out. Think of something that you can do that you can start today or tonight that's going to help you improve your health. And that could very well be just turning off all the electronics about an hour before you go to bed, right? Turning off the scanners, turning off the phones, putting that stuff down, and allowing your body to relax and chill out before you go to bed. All right? What else can we do? We already talked about those distractions, okay? Something else that we can do is avoid excessive alcohol intake or tobacco usage. Okay, first of all, you shouldn't be using tobacco at all. I'm sorry if you are, but that's just plain and simple the wrong thing to do as a human being, not just as a firefighter. We know that it kills us. We should do everything that we can to try to avoid that, right? We want to try to avoid death as long as we can, to be quite honest with you. But those things also stimulate you, right? So the tobacco usage can stimulate you at night. Drinking alcohol before you go to bed may help you go to sleep, but chances are it's not going to provide you with very restful sleep, because you might have to get up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, or it could even help cause things like acid reflux and indigestion as well. So if we can tend to limit or avoid those kinds of things, then we're doing ourselves a favor. And lastly, if you're known to have significant sleep issues like sleep apnea or whatever, we would recommend it if you've tried everything else and it's not working for you to engage in a sleep study. Lots of people have found out some things like that by going through sleep studies that they've been able to overcome because they didn't know what was happening with them in the middle of the night. So that's one last thing that you can do if you've tried everything else and it doesn't seem to work. So that were some passive recovery techniques that we talked about, and now we're gonna move on quickly to some active recovery methods. So we talked earlier about cool down stretching, right? So we talk about dynamic stretching pre-workout, post-workout. Cool down stretching is a wonderful way to help your body start to do the repair and recovery process after you've done a workout. So slow and methodical reach and hold stretching, even 5 minutes at a moderate to slow pace on an exercise bike, whatever it is that helps get your heart rate back down to normal and that keeps your body limbered up and starts cooling everything down, is an appropriate active recovery method. Some of you may have problems with adhesions and knots, specific sore spots, right? Sore spots, in certain muscles. So self-myofascial release is the technical term for foam rolling. And so we recommend that you take some time to work out those kinks, so to speak, by doing some foam rolling. That's an indication of, a targeted area where you're trying to get some relief. In that case, you're probably going to endure some therapeutic pain is the way we like to put it, where we talk about stretching. We don't like to recommend that you stretch to pain, only discomfort. But when you do your foam rolling or lacrosse ball rolling or whatever that you do locally to relieve that pressure and break up those adhesions in your muscles, you're probably going to experience some more significant pain. So just be prepared for that. Research shows that a massage immediately following or within 24 hours of a strenuous workout has tremendous therapeutic benefits as well. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't really have the time or money or ability to be able to get a massage after every workout. But if you can, great. You should try to engage in that. And the closer that you engage in that to your workout, the more benefit it's going to be. Right. And then last but not least is proper attention to hydration and nutrition, which is also going to aid in your recovery and your body systems. Okay. We're going to talk more specifically in a moment about some hydration tips and tricks. And certainly we all should know by now that what we put in is what we get out. So nutrition is a big part of recovery, as it is a big part of our overall health. So if we're going to cool down, we're going to do the stretching, we're going to do the foam rolling, we're going to do the 5 to 10 to 15 minutes of just very light to moderate exercise, static stretching, or maybe something like an exercise bike or something like that, just to get us cooled off again. If you do need to foam roll, there's some tips here for you. 3 to 5 sets of 30 seconds, 3 to 5 times a week. You can do it anytime you want, really, even on your rest days. Lots of different implements that you can engage in. There's also what's called the Graston technique here. So there's certain things that you can actually see a professional to do. It looks painful. It probably feels a little bit uncomfortable, but I've never had it done. But from everybody that I've talked to that has engaged in that, it's a tremendous benefit if you have a particular problem spot in one of your muscle groups that you need help getting worked out. But the main thing is we don't just leave our workout when we're done our high intensity part of our workout and just roll on out the door, right? We have to make sure that we pay attention to our active recovery techniques as well. So moving on to our third pillar, that's going to be hydration. We're going to talk about hydration and how we like to think about our approach to it, but also how it relates to our body systems and what happens to our bodies on the fire ground. So just like we talked about earlier, we can't just focus our strength training or our workouts on strength training. We have to incorporate all those other components. Um, it's just as important that we remember that we have to hydrate in order to take better care of ourselves. Okay, our body systems, folks, our body systems are literally like taxed beyond belief when we're engaged in strenuous firefighting tasks. Okay, and as firefighters, we do not have the option of waiting until we're quote unquote thirsty to hydrate. Okay, everybody that's here that's ever gone to a fire call knows that we never know when they're going to come, and we never know how much energy we're going to have to exert when we get to that call. And so if we start our day dehydrated, it's too late when we get to the fire ground, and then we have to rehydrate because we're taxed and we're spent, right? So the PRP method really is very simple. Just like the Big 8, we kind of developed this sort of memory stick, if you will, this PRP method, which is preparation, rehabilitation, and purging. So we're going to focus on 3 different aspects of hydration. And if we can do this properly, it's going to help us improve in terms of our overall health as well as our recovery time. Okay. Most importantly of the 3 is preparation. Okay. We do not have the time or the luxury of playing catch up as firefighters. Dr. Gavin Horn did a small scale study with a particular fire department where unannounced to the firefighters that were arriving on duty for their shift in the morning, through urinalysis and other blood work, he tested their level of hydration when they actually came on duty in the morning. And 91% of the firefighters in this study were either severely or significantly dehydrated when they walked in the door in the morning. Okay, so if we think about some of those things that we talked about earlier in this seminar and how our bodies are affected. Now, if I already show up for work and I'm already, or for my shift as a volunteer or whatever, right? I don't draw any distinctions here. I think you kind of got that message by now, hopefully. If we already show up for work dehydrated, then we're already starting behind. Just like if we already show up for work and we're not treating our hypertension, if you happen to have hypertension, you're already behind the 8 ball, right? So what kinds of effects does this dehydration have on our performance? Well, it's pretty simple. It decreases our overall performance. It increases our time to exhaustion, right? Our core body temperature raises, and our inability to control our core body temperature increases. Not to mention some physiological effects. Your cardiac output decreases, your ability to cool your body decreases, and don't forget that we're already wearing restrictive and not very well ventilated fire gear on top of that, right? We trap our body heat, right? And ultimately increase our core body temperature. So these physiological effects are going to happen no matter what we do when we go to a fire and we operate vigorously. But if we're dehydrated, all of these physiological effects are going to be compounded. Dr. Denise Smith from Skidmore College actually published a study that, ironically enough, is called The Effects of Heat Stress and Dehydration on Firefighters. And I recommend that all of you that are listening or will listen later to this, that you go on the internet and you Google that, just type in that title and Denise Smith, and it will pop up and you'll be able to download that PDF. And it was a demonstration of exactly what happens to your body from a physiological standpoint when you're dehydrated and when you're subjected to the heat stress and the other restrictions that we have as firefighters. Heart rate increases, cardiac output decreases, your blood viscosity, right? The thickness of your blood goes up when we're dehydrated and exerting ourselves. And ultimately, this all leads to the higher potential of a sudden cardiac death. And when I say sudden cardiac death, I'm not talking about you know, the heart attack that we respond to, the chest pains call that we respond to. I'm talking about in firefighters, SCD means 1 minute you're operating effectively, the next minute you drop over dead. There's a big difference between a sudden cardiac death and the physical damage that occurs to cause that versus a traditional, if you will, heart attack, you know, a blockage, if you will. So all of these things, all of those effects, those detrimental effects are compounded by lack of proper hydration. So really, this is not brain surgery. Like I said, we're firefighters, so that we don't really want complicated. The best way to avoid those effects or reduce those effects is to properly hydrate proactively, right? So what does that mean? It means we can't wait until we're thirsty to drink. Most of you should know that thirst is a late sign of dehydration to begin with. So the best way to combat this is to make sure that we're proactively hydrating our bodies. In other words, drinking water regularly before we need it, okay? National Academy of Sports Medicine recommends as a literal baseline that men drink 13 cups of water a day and women 9 cups. That's a baseline. It has a lot to do with, of course, it's going to have a lot to do with your body composition, your size, your weight, the activity that you're engaging in on a given day, but that's a literal baseline. That's something to start with, okay? So it's the best line of defense, being proactive. How are we going to do that? Well, I'll give you the best tip I can give you is that the easiest change you can make starting tomorrow morning is that when you get up in the morning, that the first thing you do is drink a big glass of water before you do anything else. That is the simplest and easiest thing to do, right? Before you even go to the coffee, the first thing you should do is drink a big glass of water to get yourself started in that day, right? Other things that you can do, make sure you have water with you wherever you go, okay? Make sure that you pre-hydrate before your exercise, your workout sessions. Make sure you're drinking water while you're working out and then rehydrate after your workouts are done. Another thing that you can do is reduce or eliminate sugary drinks and caffeinated drinks, right? There's nothing wrong with a little bit of caffeine. I'm not here to tell you that you have to abstain from all this stuff. What I'm trying to tell you is that the less of that you drink, the more water you drink, the better hydration level your body is gonna achieve, okay? So if you're gonna drink a cup of coffee or 2 cups of coffee, you should be following that up with 2 or 3 glasses of water, right? Sugary drinks, alcohol, those types of things are all detrimental to your body in any number of different ways besides increasing your dehydration, and should be avoided or minimized as much as you can. So beyond being proactive about our rehab, not our rehab, our hydration. The next thing we're going to focus on real quick is actual rehab, right? Rehab is not for sissies. Rehab is a very important aspect of fireground operations, or I should say incident scene operations, because it doesn't just have to be a fire, right? And so we want to focus on making sure that we're taking care of our people on the scene as well as before we get there, okay? So rehydrating is, and going to rehab is an opportunity for us to get our gear off, to cool down, to reduce hyperthermia, and to be able to rehydrate. And also, probably most importantly, to have our vitals checked and monitored to make sure that our bodies are recovering in the appropriate amount of time that they should for a healthy person. So, for example, if you've ever had a fitness assessment, excuse me, a fitness assessment as part of a physical, one of the things that they do when they do your stress tests and all that is to monitor your vitals after you're done. And that what they're doing is taking their vitals and making sure that your blood pressure and your pulse rate are returning to the normal range and how quickly that's happening. And that's an advantage of going to rehab as well, is to make sure that you are recovering like you're supposed to, and then there's not something else going on with you, okay? So critically important that you participate in rehab as much as we participate in purging, which is the last of the three. So increasing cellular oxygenation is a big positive when we rehabilitate and when we purge and when we rehydrate after we're done. Okay. Rehydration boosts your immune system. It reduces the chances of obesity and diabetes. And what it also does is it helps to flush the carcinogens that you may have absorbed during your firefighting efforts. It helps to flush them from your organs. So the more water you drink, the more flushing, internal flushing of your body takes place by expelling that fluid. Okay. And so people don't realize, I know cancer is the big nasty word in the fire service these days, but the whole idea of hydration and even fitness and working out and how that applies to the reduction in your chances of being diagnosed with cancer cannot be overstated. I can tell you that I've talked to scientists that have told me that regular exercise can reduce your chance of being diagnosed with certain cancers by up to 30%, right? I can tell you that the more you purge this stuff from your body as quickly as you can, the more chances, the more you're going to reduce that risk. Okay, so just as we talked about with physical fitness, just as we talked about with rest and recovery, your homework for hydration is, once again, is to figure out something that you can do starting tomorrow or today even, that you can make one small change that's an achievable, realistic goal to improve your hydration, right? And try to stick with that. And in the last, looks like we got about a half hour left. And in the last little bit, I want to talk about what everybody probably just couldn't wait to discuss. And what everybody loves to talk about the most is our firefighters, as firefighters, our wonderful nutrition. Okay. So difficult stuff to talk about, but it's really important, right? So it's been said, and it's probably true, you know, we can spend 6 or 7 days in a week in the gym, and we can physically take as good a care of ourselves as we can by exercising or training and working out. But if we don't take care of what we're putting into our body and be careful of what we're putting into our body, then it's really all for naught. Okay. So again, firefighter functional fitness is a comprehensive approach. It's not about just working out. And one of the biggest things we can do to help improve our overall health is to improve our approach to fitness. So what's our philosophy? You've all heard of these: calorie counting, macros, various diets like keto, Beachbody, or we have to cut carbs, or no gluten, or a dairy-free diet, or cheat days, or starving yourself. All of these things, right? 21-day fix. All of these things are what we consider to be trend diets or trend approaches that for most people are not sustainable. Okay. Now, am I suggesting that you do not do any of this? No, I'm not. You're individually, it's up to you how you want to achieve your nutrition goals. But what I am suggesting is that, and I'll make the disclaimer right now that I'm sharing a philosophy. I'm not a registered dietitian or nutritionist. Okay. I'm here to share a philosophy and hopefully give you some information on what's good and what isn't good in terms of what you put in your body. Okay. Our suggestion is that instead of focusing on trends and fads, is that you just take the concept that food is fuel. Okay. So really it comes down to this: what you put into your body, it's no different than what you put into your car. Okay. If you have a high performance sports car, but you put diesel fuel in that instead of high test gasoline, then what's the performance output going to be on that vehicle, right? Our bodies are no different, right? So what you put in is what you get out when it comes to us as human beings, right? Food is fuel. So the keys to success in terms of any nutritional plan really come in the way of balance, variety, and eating what we call real food, not processed food. Okay. We need to put, quite simply, the right foods in your body from the right sources in the right amounts. And if you stick to that philosophy, if you will improve. Okay. So how do we do that? Well, depending on what era you grew up in, you may have heard of different things being good or bad for you. You may have been told to avoid certain things or have a lot of another type of essential for nutrition. We're going to talk very briefly about all four main categories: fats, carbohydrates, fiber, and protein. The reality of it is, folks, is that you need all of this, okay? It's not about avoiding fat. It's not about avoiding carbs. It's not about eating incredibly high levels of protein, for example. What it's about is getting those nutrients from the right sources and ingesting them in the right amounts. Okay, so all of these things are needed for different reasons in your body. So here's some quick examples of some good healthy fats that we need to make sure that we're ingesting. Monounsaturated fats from things like avocados, nuts, olive oil, peanut butter, sunflower seeds, excuse me, in the right amounts are absolutely needed and are absolutely healthy for you. So monounsaturated fats and some of their sources. Polyunsaturated fats. Again, you're going to see a recurring theme here that nuts and legumes are going to be healthy for you in a lot of different categories, right? Some other sources of polyunsaturated fats include some oily fishes like mackerel and salmon, right? Flax and chia seeds, those kinds of things that are going to help you. And what do these fats do? They're either going to help you with, depending on what fat you ingest, they're either going to help you lower your bad cholesterol or they're going to help you increase your good cholesterol. All right. Some of you may have had different points of view about saturated fats. There's an ongoing debate about whether they're good or bad for you. I'm not here to try to tell you one way or the other what you should think. I think you should do your own research. But we do know that there is science that tells us that certain types of saturated fats can actually be healthy for you through cell nutrition, through the increasing of your satiety, which is really that feeling of fullness that you feel. Okay, so if you feel full, you're not going to eat as much, right? So the key with saturated fats, if you choose to go that route, is again the sources, right? So the good saturated fats are going to come from things like organic ground beef, coconut oil, eggs, those kinds of things, right? Of course, the saturated fats that are present in things like beef sticks and hot dogs, I know that's that's terrible to hear for some of us, right? But those are the bad things. So what I really want you to get out of this is to focus on the source of your nutrition more so than the name of what it is that somebody told you to avoid or have a lot of or whatever. Where are you getting this stuff from is really what's most important. Of course, we all want to avoid trans fat at all costs. Vegetable oils, donuts, fried foods like that we all love to eat. That's margarine, not butter, for anybody that's wondering, and the like. So I would like to believe that we're all of enough intelligence and common sense at this point that we try to stay away from this stuff, and then we know that it's just like we know smoking is bad for us and it can cause cancer. We know that these trans fats are extremely hazardous to our health over time and cause a lot of complications in terms of health risks. Okay, so as far as fats, we just want to make sure we're getting them from the right sources because we do need them. Same thing with carbohydrates, okay, folks? You need carbohydrates, okay? We cannot avoid them. The idea here is that we focus on complex versus simple carbohydrates. We focus on providing our bodies with the correct nutrition and getting the stuff from the right sources, okay? You need carbohydrates for energy. You need more carbohydrates even after you've worked out, right? So we can't fall into a trap of somebody telling us that we are, we're to avoid all this stuff 100%. We just have to get it from the right sources. So avoiding these carbs like refined and high glycemic index foods. All right. So if anybody's ever had an issue where they've eaten something with a lot of high glycemic, like a high glycemic index food, like a lot of sugar that spikes and drops immediately. Like for me, for example, like I can't eat anything anyway sugary in the morning. Like if I was to try to eat a donut or something like that, I would feel good for about an hour or two, and then I would just bottom out. So the lower glycemic index foods are going to spread out that distribution of good sugar over a longer period of time. Okay. So what we want to try to avoid is, or minimize, is the white flours, the white rices. Things like rice cakes, you might think they're healthy for you, but they're loaded with sugar. Some of these cereals that sometimes are quote unquote told to you that they're healthy are higher on the glycemic index. Gluten-free bread may be gluten-free, but take a look at the ingredients and make sure you see what else is in there first, okay? Because it probably wouldn't taste very good if if some of that stuff that they put in there wasn't in there, right? Dried fruit that's coated with sugar, just because it's fruit doesn't mean it's good for you, okay? I hate to say it, folks, but just because it's fruit doesn't mean it's good for you. So if it's coated with sugar, it's a no-no. Some other things that we might think of, well, instant oatmeal. We like to think that oatmeal is healthy, okay? But instant oatmeal has a lot of stuff added to it, like sugars and stuff that make it not quite as healthy, not even close to being as healthy as steel cut oatmeal or traditional oatmeal. So if you're going to eat oatmeal, eat the right stuff. White potatoes, anything in a box or a bag, unfortunately. And of course, sugar in alcohol and soft drinks is also things that we want to avoid. So you're probably sitting there thinking right now, what is this guy crazy? Like, I'm not supposed to eat anything that I like anymore? Folks, I'm not here to tell you that you have to avoid everything, okay? The whole idea, let's just make sure that you understand this so I don't get lynched later. The whole idea about all this is that you minimize or you lead a lifestyle of moderation, right? I certainly enjoy pizza. I like a drink of beer every once in a while. You know, there's things that I like like most of us like to do. I'm not telling you you have to stop doing that. What I'm asking you to consider is that you moderate what you put into your body, and that most of the things that you put into your body on a regular daily basis are coming from the right sources and not just the convenient sources, okay? Can you never have a bowl of ice cream or eat some potato chips? Of course you can. If you don't allow yourself some of the pleasures that you like, you're going to fail anyway in terms of your overall nutrition, right? So please don't mistake what I'm telling you here as a mandate that you can never eat or drink any of this stuff anymore. I just really want you to understand that the amount of it that you put into your body and the frequency of it is what needs to be monitored, okay? Last, well, not second to last, but something that everybody loves to talk about is fiber, right? So fiber, I think we do okay on because of the different things that we eat. Its importance can't be overstated. It reduces heart disease, reduces the risk of diabetes. It increases that feeling of fullness depending on the types of fiber that we eat. So certainly lots of different options as far as that's concerned. Lots of different fruits and vegetables that we can get our fiber from. Berries, pears, apples, raspberries, bananas, blueberries, oranges, strawberries. These are things that most of us like to eat. Dried fruit like prunes and figs and raisins and apricots. Yes, there's some sugar in them, but it's natural sugar. Just make sure, again, that it's not coated with dry sugar. Vegetables like artichoke hearts, peas, greens, corn, broccoli, sweet potatoes. Those things all are high in fiber, okay? And Jim's rule, my partner's rule, is that, you know, we're doing ourselves a big favor if we include something green on our dinner plate every night. And that doesn't mean green Jello, folks, okay? If we have something green on our plate every night, we're doing ourselves a favor. Some other fiber-rich foods, the nuts and the legumes, beans, whole grains. In other words, if you like rice, brown rice has 6 times more fiber and is way more healthy in terms of no sugar or reduced sugar than white rice, okay? Nuts and seeds. And then last but not least, we talk about protein. Folks, protein is absolutely critical for firefighters. We definitely need it. We need more of it when we train, but just like anything else, too much of it can be unhealthy for you. Okay, too much protein can cause strained kidneys, weight gain, dehydration, and in some cases even contribute to increased risk of cancer. Okay, so for an athlete, the National Academy of Sports Medicine suggests 0.5 to 0.8 grams of protein per pound per day. That's for an athlete, like not office manager or a receptionist or whatever, but we are considered, I like to consider firefighters occupational or tactical athletes. So we should probably be erring on the higher side of this, especially on days where we've been fighting fires or we've been training or we've been in the gym working out. So this is where we're at with just a general rule of thumb with protein and how much we should be ingesting on a daily basis. 0.5 to 0.8 grams per pound per day. The source of the protein is probably the most important thing, just like the sources of all the other stuff we just talked about, right? Poultry, omega-3 fishes, lean beef, grass-fed beef, pork tenderloin, all excellent sources of protein. If you like game or if you're a hunter, those are excellent sources of protein. And of course, again, nuts, legumes, and plain yogurt. I'm talking about plain yogurt that doesn't have any sugar added or anything else. So how do we sweeten and make that kind of yogurt taste good? Just a drop or two of honey works, something to mix in with it just to give it a little bit of sweetness. In our book, we also share an A to Z list of foods that help fight cancer. And some of these are shown here: apples and berries, onions, nuts, legumes, greens, even caffeine. So check that out if you have an opportunity. So we're almost on time here. I just want to finish up by just giving you guys just a brief summary of some of the things that we covered today. I can't stress enough that this is a really quick, it's 2 hours, but I'm telling you that like when we teach this stuff at fire departments and stuff like that, we spend at least a full day, if not 2 days, on each of these pillars. So our pillars, to summarize, are physical fitness, recovery, hydration, and nutrition. Remember, Firefighter Functional Fitness is a comprehensive approach. It incorporates physical fitness, it incorporates active and passive recovery methods, okay? Rest, sleep. It incorporates proactive hydration, and it incorporates sensible nutrition. This is not a diet program. We're not suggesting anything of the sort. Sensible nutrition, watching what you eat in terms of where you're getting the food from and how much of it you're putting in your body. It's certainly not to suggest that you're not ever allowed to have anything that you enjoy. It's just about living a moderated lifestyle and, basically living up to the oath that we all swore when we became firefighters. We talked briefly, or not briefly, but we gave you an overview of the Big 8 method, right? This is your functional fitness, right? This is your physical fitness, and it's based on firefighter movements, not muscle groups, okay? So let's review real quick. We have core strength, cardiovascular capacity, and flexibility, right? Then we have the 5 functional strength training categories: the push, the pull, the lift, the carry, and the drag. Your workout regimens, your workout programs should focus on those components and replicating those movements that you do on the fire ground in the gym when you work out. Okay, it's simple, it's effective, right? And what are the questions we need to say yes to? Is it safe? Is it effective? And is it functional? We talked about both active and passive recovery methods. Passive being rest and sleep, rest days, allowing your muscles to repair after you've worked out. And active recovery methods such as cool down stretching, foam rolling, massage, and the like. Okay. Hydration, I think you get the point. Drink more water, drink more water, drink more water. Okay. It can't get any simpler than that. Nutrition really comes down to this, is eating real food. Okay. Remember, the right foods from the right sources in the right amounts, and that food is fuel. What you put into your body is what you're going to get out, just like your car. So think about what you're putting in your body, and you'll be fine. As promised, our contact information, again, our website, firefighterfunctionalfitness.com. I encourage you to check it out, learn more about our book. It's a #1 bestseller on Amazon as well. We're very, very humbled and blessed to know that the book is worldwide. It's in probably close to 50 countries around the world now. We take great pride in the fact that we're just helping firefighters achieve a higher level of health and wellness. That's really all we care about. I can guarantee you that if you haven't seen it, I think it would be a great benefit to you. So I encourage you to visit our website, download our free special reports. If you are interested in a workshop for your agency, you can either click on the pull down tab, there's a workshops link, or you can email me at dankerrigan911@gmail.com. And that's Jim's email as well, jimmoss911@gmail.com. And by all means, if you have any questions at all about fitness, wellness, nutrition, whatever it is, don't be bashful. Email me anytime. In fact, you can email Firefighter Functional Fitness at gmail.com, and it will go to both of us. That's our overall email address for our everything that we do. Again, we're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Our handle is @FirefighterFFit. Please follow us. Take advantage of the free stuff that we put out there daily. Please check out our YouTube channel if you're interested in looking at new workout ideas, or you're just not quite sure about how to do that particular exercise that you want to try. I can guarantee it's probably on there. We have, like I said, nearly 400 videos on our YouTube channel that's there for you to use. And I just encourage everybody to contact us, reach out, let us know what we can do to help you. Our goal is to hopefully everybody that listens to this presentation live and later on, do yourself a favor of trying to make one small improvement in each of those 4 pillar areas today. One small improvement in your physical fitness. It could be something as simple as getting up and taking a walk in your neighborhood today. Okay. Do something small to improve your hydration.
California Casualty has been endorsed by the MSFA for 10 years for its auto, home, and renter's insurance. It is our honor and privilege to protect those who protect our communities. Happy 10-year anniversary to the members of MSFA. Thank you for all that you do. For more information about our program, please visit www.calcash.com/MSFA. We look forward to seeing you at various local, county, and state events.